Terrell, and I am here at the Rose and Crown in Stoke Newington to have an interview with Suli Breaks. Just in case you haven't heard who he is, take a look at some of his work.
Parents that say they want educated kids but constantly marvel at how rich Richard Branson is. Governments that preach peace but endorse wars. That say they believe so much in the importance of higher education and further learning, then why increase tuition fees every single year? Now some of you will protest like, money's only the medium by which one measures worldly success. And some of you even have the nerve to say, I don't do it for the money. So what are you studying for? To work for a charity? Need more clarity? Let's look at the statistics. When I say RIP, I don't just mean rest in peace. I mean rewind it please, so we can remain in peace. I had to read it properly to get it right in perspective. Cause we reside in poverty, but don't want rights in property. We'd rather rob innocent people, cause he gains respect in popping me. That's a real ignorant philosophy. And don't be afraid to innovate, cause it's not about how much change you make, but rather about how much change you make. Cause a business that makes nothing but money is a poor business. So you decide what your life is worth, your passion or your paycheck. Because your playing small does not serve the world. Because what is our deepest fear? It's not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
How you doing? You alright?
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you, man. You good, yeah?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. My name is Trudy.
Nice to meet you, man. You're the man behind the operation, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so Suli, before we start, with all my interviews, I like to ask people, give us something random that we don't know about you. Go ahead.
Well, maybe random to you guys here, but I think it's public knowledge because I promote it enough. But I'm a big Twilight fan, I got all the books and I've got all the films on DVD as well. And I went to watch the last one at IMAX, you know what I mean? So that's like one of my kind of things that that's one of the things that I just love in it, that a lot of people would not suspect just looking at me in it, you know what I mean?
Okay, so you're a big fan and
Twilight, definitely
okay.
Huge.
Well, that is very random. Okay, so you've achieved a lot so far in your career so far. You have a YouTube channel. You've got over 100,000 subscribers and nearly 7 million views. How does that feel to you?
I mean, it's really overwhelming, I'm grateful to be in the position, because at the end of the day, as an artist, any artist or any writer, essentially all you ever want is an audience, you know what I mean? And the bigger the audience, the better. And to have an audience of such magnitude is definitely, it's kind of a credit to your art, and it definitely shows a form of appreciation, you know what I mean? Especially when we mostly start from a position where nobody's listening, and now to have like 7 million views and almost 100,000 people listening, you know what I mean? I couldn't be any more thankful or grateful.
Okay, so far in your life, what would you say is your biggest achievement?
My biggest achievement so far in my life? Hopefully, I have a couple of things planned that is good. Hopefully, that's going to be my biggest achievement, but that's in the near future. Yeah. But at the moment, I think it would probably be convincing my mum that I could actually be successful at what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Because initially, my mum was probably the most against what I was doing, and then eventually by showing her my work and the response I started generating, she's like the biggest advocate of everything I do right now, you know what I mean? So I think she's the most hard-headed person in the world. So when I step in front of audiences, a lot of the time I'm not afraid if I can impress them or not, because I feel like I've convinced my mum, that's probably the hardest person in the world. So I mean, for me that was a big stepping stone and a big milestone, career-wise and also personally. And I think it's very rare that you get milestones which combine both. It's either career-related or personal-related, you know what I mean? So for me, those things that were related and intertwined, that's probably the biggest success for me so far.
Okay, and what about in your career? What would you say is your biggest achievement there?
In the career, I mean, let me think of it. It have to be, look at it statistically. I don't like to say because I feel like a lot of moments have stood out, but I mean, the fact that one of my videos got over 3 million views, you know what I mean? That was definitely overwhelming. Anyone can look at that and be like, yeah, that's a big moment in his career, looking from a statistical, quantitative point of view. But for me personally, was I had an event in Canada. I was in Canada, and I was checking in my bags at the place where you check in the bags. And the woman that was checking in the bags in Canada, she stopped me and she was like, yo, like, I seen your videos in it, I really like them. And for me, that's a big career achievement. The fact that your words can spawn from your little bedroom and all across the world. And you know, when I was in Canada walking through the mall and someone else stopped me, you know what I mean? And just that whole worldwide kind of fact that I had that presence, for me, that was a big achievement, I felt like, career-wise.
Okay, so what motivates you to speak about what you speak about?
I definitely think it comes from a very personal standpoint, you know what I mean? I think life in general is the inspiration you need for anything. A lot of people do get to points where you can't think of nothing to write, and that's strange because you're still living, you know what I mean? But for me personally, everything I've written from is my personal experience. When I write about education, it's from my years I spent in the school system. When I write about jobs and careers and being successful, it's from my years I spent working in particular jobs, then progressing into career. When I write about parents, when I write about poverty. So it's all just from a personal perspective, and whenever an incident happens in one of those areas and it stands at the forefront of my mind, it normally becomes the topic or for a potential piece or potential something to write about.
Okay, and inspirations, what has inspired you?
What's inspired me? Looking at people that have been successful, you know what I mean, especially people who come from very humble beginnings. I think a prime example for anyone living in the UK who's from our certain demographic and look at someone like Jamal Edwards or Tiny Temper and people like that and see the inspiration that they provide and the fact that they've come from a background which we're very familiar with, and they've managed to progress to the stage that they have, and they're on a plateau of people who traditionally you wouldn't have put them on. So over recent, I was watching one of Jamal's interviews, you know what I mean, and Tiny just released a new thing, and that was really inspirational to me to see the possibilities that are open to us at the moment.
And I'm sure there must have been hard times in the past where maybe there was a stumbling block or you didn't feel that what you were actually doing was going to get as far as it got.
Yeah,
what kept you on that trail? What pushed you even further?
I think it sounds a bit desperate, but me, I felt like I had no other choice, you know what I mean? I'm quite clever academically, but I wasn't inclined to do any of those things. I didn't feel like I'd excel at any of them. But when it came to kind of the spoken word and the poetry and making music and art, when it came to that, it kind of came second nature to me. So I thought, if I don't make this work, there's nothing else I'm going to make work. That means I'm back to stacking shelves at Sainsbury's. I don't have a choice, you know what I mean? It's either stacking shelves or I make this work. So it was really, the internal motivation was that I couldn't afford to give up, really and truly. That was the main motivation and incentive for me to pursue.
Okay, so obviously you went to school. What was, we'll start off with primary school. What was primary school like for you?
Primary school was great. I mean, I've never met anyone who said they didn't like primary school, you know what I mean? Primary school was great, you know, it was cool, it was fun. And I grew up, I was born here, but then I moved to Ghana for like 3 years. So I did a little bit of primary school in there, then I came back here. And when I came back here, it was just like heaven to me, you know. We had like cartoons on TV all day, you know what I mean? On Ghana, all you can watch on Sunday, but it's changed now, but we could only watch like, you know, the reruns of like the nativity and like the gospel programs every Sunday, then occasionally catch a Bollywood movie. But here, you know, we could watch flipping Batman and Robin. That's the clearest memory I have, coming back watching Batman and Robin, having computer games on the cable, you know, the cable with the remote control. And I love primary school. I learned so much. I had access to all the books I wanted to read. I really enjoyed reading, and I made a lot of friends, and all in the area, you know. I really love primary school. That was when I was living in South London.
Okay. And the transition between primary school and secondary school, how did you find that personally?
I think secondary school is a bit, everyone says secondary school is their fondest memories. I like secondary school, but I felt it was a bit overrated, you know what I mean, in the extent that when the structure way we came from primary school, I moved to a different area to go to another primary school. When I came into secondary school, I wasn't too familiar with a lot of people, meaning that a lot of people had already formulated groups within the secondary school. And not saying I didn't enjoy it, I didn't like being in the groups, but I went through a period of discovery as well because I had to move house again. So I was going through all of this and at the same time still trying to maintain the school in it. So it involved me getting in, sometimes in a lot of conflict with other people, you know, just because of where I was coming from and where I was trying to understand myself during that period. But I like secondary school. Learning wise, my mind opened up a lot, you know what I mean? It was cool.
Yeah. And did anything happen in school that influenced you to this day?
In school, not in secondary school, nah, not really in secondary. It was probably outside of school that stuff influenced me more, especially because of the area I moved into. All my influences really came outside of school. I really did develop a passion for English, so I've really always liked reading. And the English teachers that I had Mr. Vasquez, very inspirational. Mr. James, rest in peace, you know, unfortunately he had a situation. And then the English teacher, my head form tutor was an English teacher as well, so they kind of fueled that passion that I always had for it. But aside from that, yeah.
Okay, so your video, Being Poor is the Root of All Evil, what drove you to do that?
Being poor is the root of all evil. I mean, that's a video I regret. I don't regret that it's out there, but I regret doing it because of the place that I was when I wrote it. I think the content is very relevant, and I think I made substantial points, but I feel when I wrote it from a very bitter place of the fact that I didn't have a lot of money, and it was frustrating me. And I think when you listen to that piece, ultimately the message that comes across is that money is everything, and money is important, don't get it twisted, but at the end of the day I didn't want to translate that it's everything. I wanted to translate that as a means to end, and I hate it when people say, oh, you don't need money to make you happy, because I think to an extent that's not realistic, you know what I mean? But at the same time I didn't want to go veer too far and be like, yeah, you need money, but at that point I was really low, you know. I was working 5 days a week, 9 to 5 typically in the shop, and I was, stacking trainers in Nike Town, and it was just really frustrating me, you know what I mean? And then especially when you're in Nike Town, you have a lot of football players coming in, you have a lot of people who are wealthy because it's the flagship store for the whole of Europe, and I was seeing this contrast every day, and I was like, why am I on this side of the spectrum and everyone else is on that side of the spectrum? And I just started, like pretty much just going in and saying that you need money, I need money at the moment to be where I need to be. And that's what the inspiration was, really just seeing that contrast of how we lived and how other people were living. Someone spending like $1,000 in one day on these people buy it made. These people come from Arab, like these guys are rich, and they can spend like $1,000 on like socks and just like football kits, you know what I mean? And that was my monthly salary. So that's definitely where that came from.
Okay. So everything we talk about has come from your own personal experience.
Has to, yeah, everything definitely from personal experience.
I guess that way it means much more.
It means, yeah, and I think it means much more to other people as well, because you always appreciate when someone is talking. It's like, that's why a lot of people can't relate to a lot of politicians or MPs, because they start advocating stuff, but they've never lived it themselves.
Can't talk from experience.
Yeah, like the guy I can't remember what his name was, I sound very ignorant, but I don't really follow politics, but he said he could live on a certain amount a week, you know what I mean, and that should be allowance, but when he was told to do it, he didn't do it, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think you definitely have to come from a personal place to project a clear message.